Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Lord. We saw a couple of tweets from this morning talking about the Falcons defense, which looked very good in Ryan Nielsen's first game. Jake, I think you have them pulled up. You want to read them off.
Yeah, by the way, I just saw this in the replies, and I think it's super interesting. I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm just going to say it is. This one guy said Ryan Nielsen is pretty good. The Packers interviewed him in 2021 before they hired Matt LaFleur. I did not know that. But Dan Orlovsky had started off the conversation. He said, unit that I was most surprised by, the Atlanta Falcons defense. Scheme was multiple and always changing and hard to decipher. It's an insane run-on sentence. You'll have to forgive me. And Bates is one of the least trustable from a quarterback perspective defensive backs in the NFL. Very impressive unit. And then Aaron Nagler responded to that and said, quote, this defense is crazy, is what a Packers coach texted me about them yesterday. Big test for Jordan Love and company. So, I mean, they're getting some hype. It's definitely not unwarranted either. I was at the game when we were all at the game. I mean, the defense was stingy. Like, as bad as things looked offensively, the defense was absolutely stingy, and it's crazy to say that the Falcons actually have a good-looking defense.
There's no doubt about that's why the Falcons won that game. I mean, the offense was pretty terrible there for the first half. The second half, they pulled it together, put some points on the board. But, I mean, you could point to one guy, but the whole defense, Jesse Bates' 3 turnovers and the entire defensive effort was the reason why the Falcons won that game. And I do – like, the most important thing was all of the free agent additions. Jesse Bates, Caden Ellis, David Onyemata, Calais Campbell didn't have as flashy as a game as those other threes. They all had great games. Obviously, we all know about Jesse Bates, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, double-digit tackles. He was all over the field. He's only 26 years old. He's going to be a building block of this franchise moving forward. David Onyemata looked, came as advertised, got pushed in the run game, pushed the pocket when he was rushing the passer. And I know a lot of people are going to point to the lack of a pass rush, but I rewatched it, and I don't think that's really the case. The sacks maybe weren't there, but they were still putting pressure on Bryce Young. He relieved a lot of pressure off Grady Jarrett. And Caden Ellis, at first watch, I didn't think he had a good game. And when I rewatched, he did just fine. And he didn't get enough pass rush opportunities. I did have a problem with that. That's a strength of his. We talked about it all offseason. Chase had some bold predictions that he would lead the Falcons in sacks. I don't think that's that crazy to say. He didn't get enough pass rush opportunities. But this defense is very multiple in what they do. I can go and nerd out to you, but basically they're showing quarterbacks pre-snap and post-snap different looks. They're showing multiple looks throughout a drive, different drives. And what's most impressive to me is when you play in these sub packages, which is basically more defensive backs than not, nickel looks and things like that. These cornerbacks are down to come up and fill the lanes. Like, they want to support the run, and that's not always the case around the league where cornerbacks are kind of timid to go and stick their nose in things. That's not the case in Atlanta. A.J. Terrell, D. Alford, Trey Flowers, hopefully Jeff Okudah's back, but Trey Flowers did an admirable job. All those guys really, really deserve props.
Yeah, there was one play I'm thinking about. I can't. It was one of Bryce Young's first deep balls, and he almost connected. I think maybe it was Jonathan Mingo, but AJ Terrell was right in his pocket. He got his head around. I had a great view of that one. He got to the ball, got his head around, and I think even if the ball was on target, he would have got a pass breakup. So yeah, I was impressed by the secondary.
Yeah, I got a question just about this because you think back to how we had Dean Pease over the last 2 years, and this is kind of what we expected from Dean Pease as far as a complex defense that really confused opposing quarterbacks, especially rookie quarterbacks. Yet we kind of always heard excuses like, "Oh, we don't even have 2/3 of our playbook and now we're in year 2. Oh, we still don't have half the playbook learned these guys." And it's like, was Dean Pease just bad at his job, or was the personnel just not able to do some of the things that Dean Pease and maybe Ryan Nielsen's doing now? And now that you have better personnel, you're able to do these things early on.
We had the wrong Ravens defensive coordinator. We should have had Wink Martindale. That dude's been cooking with the Giants, but now it doesn't matter. I'm glad we have Nielsen.
To me, I've said this multiple times, and it's a very simplified way to say it, but I do think it applies in the question you're asking, is that defense is about talent. And scheme matters, but talent matters more. Offensively, scheme matters, and talent matters a little bit less. Look at all the veterans that were added. Jesse Bates alone is a world of a difference. Caden Ellis has been around the block. And then all the guys up front. A.J. Terrell, Trey Flowers is a vet. I mean, I don't want to make excuses for Dean Pease because those units were terrible, but he was working with, I mean, guys who are bagging groceries right now. He had absolutely no talent on that side of the ball. I think it may be a little bit of both, but mostly talent, I would say.
I saw a lot of people saying that Caden Ellis didn't play well, and I don't know where that's coming from. I did not get that sentiment at all.
I mean, I think he had an 80 PFF grade, and I know people that watched it a lot closer, rewatched it, and they said maybe he had like one missed play on the run game. They just didn't use him as the versatile chess piece, like in terms of pass rushing, that a lot of people expected, which maybe that's just not the plan for him this year. I mean, listen, the Falcons do have a good defensive front. They do have a lot of guys that they can rotate in and get pressure with. We even saw Troy Anderson get a sack there in the fourth quarter. He's an athletic linebacker that can probably be used in a similar role. And maybe that's just Ryan Nielsen just kind of switching it up a little. And maybe we see a little bit more of Caden Ellis rushing the passer in week 2. I think the biggest thing is maybe we thought Caden Ellis was going to rush the passer. He used Troy Anderson in that role a little bit more than Caden Ellis. And that's just another thing that kept the offense off guard.
Yeah, another thing that was interesting about the defense, I was curious to see how the rotation would look like across the defensive line, and it almost shook out to about a 2-to-1 ratio. So, Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, and Bud Dupree took about twice as many snaps as Arnold Ebiketie, Lorenzo Carter, Zach Harrison, and Taquan Graham. And that's just going to keep those starters so much healthier fresher. I'm sorry. And that is something to pay attention to going forward because Calais Campbell's no spring chicken. David Onyemata is 30 years old. Grady Jarrett has been a one-man wrecking crew his entire career. He's still got a lot of juice. I'm not saying anything about that, but that's something to pay attention to moving forward.
Let's do a little overreaction. What is it? It's Wednesday, but a week 1 overreaction. We talked about this defense being potentially, a league average unit and how much that would help the Falcons based on what it was last year. Now I'm going to do an overreaction here. Could the Falcons have a top 10 defense this year?
I was going to say 5. I think right now, I think if you look at the performances last week, they were a top 5 defense. But yeah, that's obviously an overreaction. But I don't think it's too crazy. I think Jason Bates can win DPOY if he gets 2 picks and a forced fumble every game.
He might win MVP if he gets that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think health is going to be a big factor in all of that. Like I said, a lot of these guys are veterans. Health is always a factor in the NFL. Injuries are inevitable. But if you look down the road and, we're looking towards the Packers this week, a lot of their quarterback matchups are favorable. There are a lot of young, inexperienced guys, and that plays into Ryan Nielsen and the Falcons' defense hands. So I don't think it's crazy to maybe, forecast a top 10 defense at the end of the year.
Yeah, I liked what I saw out of Jordan Love this week, but it's clear that Packers defense was carrying the day against Chicago. I got home from the game, and I got to catch most of that game. And Love did have some impressive throws, but at the end of the day, it was pretty similar to the Falcons game. He was much better than Desmond Ridder, but it was Aaron Jones making big plays. It was their defense coming up with big plays. It was kind of the same recipe. I think the Packers might have a little bit better ingredients, but that doesn't mean you can't win a football game, especially at home.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and this is what makes me so encouraged about the Falcons, is that it was week 1 with a lot of new pieces and with a new defensive coordinator. And we thought maybe it might take some time to gel. Well, it looked like it gelled pretty quickly. And if it only gets better from here, I mean, that's an exciting thing for Falcons fans to think about. I mean, we haven't had a good defense in so long. It's not even funny. And it would be really nice for this group. Coming up after the break, we are going to break down week 2 in the ACC.